A social Europe, that's Brussels speak for a Europe with a strong safety net, has long been the European model. But is it now time for a more free market-oriented Europe? That's the dilemma that's been at the center of European political discussion for at least a decade. It's crucial because that very debate has been intruding on most of the policies that are being elaborated by both the EU and member states, whether enlargement, workforce mobility, cross-border services and the fight against unemployment. Annemie Neyts, president of the European Liberal Party, is a Belgian member of the European Parliament and face-to-face with Philippe de Buck, Secretary-General of UNICE, the Association of European Entrepreneurs.
I'm the president of the European Liberal Party, as you know, and I might surprise you. I've always objected against the fact that liberalism is equated with one single economic theory. Of course, we are supporters of market economy, but we strongly object against being equated with what some have called neoliberalism, let alone neoconservatism.
Of course, we have to secure the market and the internal market and the market economy. And there I have sometimes a problem with the political leaders, because they have to explain that to their constituency, to their voters. Because what do we see? We see altogether reactions against it. Against Europe, against the single market. They consider Europe as too much liberal.
But what on the one hand, I also deplore that we have a number of political leaders who, instead of showing the way, are following the voters. And for instance, only this morning, I read in a newspaper the latest opinion poll about enlargement, and there's only a very tiny majority which is still in favor. And the journalist says, so the Union now has a big problem, which means that in his view, what we must do is follow the voters. Of course, we must take into account what people feel, but we have also a job to do, showing the way, explaining why reforms are necessary.
Vis-à-vis the public opinion, let us be clear that also the enlargement has been very badly explained. And I take one example, and there it's a core issue that we have, is the Services Directive. We had to talk about it. For us, the Services Directive is a key element of economical development, of growth, and therefore also on jobs. And we have had to face an enormous reaction in Belgium, in France, coming from trade unions, and I would say finger pointing to the danger coming from the East. And that I find, firstly, unfair, secondly, untrue, and I think economically unwise. And as you are the leader of the European Liberal Party, we have had this great coalition where you were not part of in the European Parliament, downsizing the Services Directive, which for us was a bad signal to the population, also from political leaders. They were not able to turn an opportunity for a service internal market into a reality.
Yes, but there, I've thought that former Commissioner Bolkestein was maybe...
He was a liberal.
Yeah, I know that.
He still is.
He still is. But that he has been a little bit too harsh when he decided that the country of origin would be applicable to all kinds of services without any distinctions whatsoever. And especially when he did present it in this way. And you have to see this in the context of the whole campaign, which was mounted by not just by trade unions, but also by a lot of NGOs, some of them American, by the way, against the first attempt to have a multilateral agreement on investments. You remember? That's how it all started, and you got attack against the WTO, then all the big demonstrations against meetings of the G8. This was the context.
The services, we have the establishment in each of the member countries that is secured, which is positive. But if you want to have an open market, you have to allow people to move.
Yeah.
And that is my problem, and I'm not saying at any conditions. because that is, by the way, also regulated. There is a posting of workers directive. Let us not go into the detail, but that we explain to the citizens that by moving activities, you create an internal market which is larger than the sum of each of the individual markets. And that, I think, is still an element you should explain better.
Well, I sometimes have the impression that what people mean when they speak about Europe needing to be more social is actually saying Europe shouldn't change. It's kind of a rejection of change. Social Europe is keeping things as they are. And I know that many people point to Denmark as a good example because someone who is unemployed is not allowed to stay unemployed for very long. But they are pushed and stimulated much sooner to accept other forms of employment.
Yes,
so this needs tailor-made measures. And in order to customize the measures, you need to be very close to the people.
For the flex security, it's a Danish system. So let us look at that as a Danish system. But what are the elements? You can hire and fire, as we say, easier. But on both sides, so that people are hired also and have the possibility to have work. Secondly, we accept, at least in Denmark, the employers, that it is accompanied by a good social system in terms of unemployment fees, but also in terms of, let's say, measures in order to be an active player in the labor market. But the last thing is that it is a very costly system. So you have to finance that. And it's really costly because of all the measures that you have to take for altogether a limited market, Denmark. So that is the challenge that we will have in most of the European countries, that we have to push the governments and the parliaments and therefore the political leaders to rethink their system.